And welcome to the Free Your Geek podcast. I am your host, Jay Free, and welcome to Fantasy Fable Friday. In the twilight heart of the Starveil Grove, where light and shadow never part, one vow forged a hunter and a legend. You're listening to Starveil, the Oath of Frostwing, a 6-part origin story starring my Daggerheart character, Sylvaris Frostwing. Before the name Sylvaris Frostwing was whispered in legend, he was simply a fairy wanderer of the endless twilight, one voice within the Starveil Grove's living heart. This 6-part origin series follows his transformation from student to hunter, from protector to exile. When a swarm of glass-winged locusts devour his homeland, Sylvaris swears an oath that binds him to the Grove's survival, and to the shadows beyond its borders. What begins as duty becomes destiny, as beauty turns to ruin, and a single vow forges the hunter the Grove will never forget. Welcome to Starveil, the Oath of Frostwing. Previously on Starveil, the Oath of Frostwing. The swarm descended, devouring light, life, and kin alike. Alone amid the ruin, Sylvaris swore his oath to the hunt, a promise born of grief and bound by fire. Episode 3: The Dire Crow. The forest had not yet healed. 3 nights had passed since the swarm lifted to the east, and still the air tasted of metal and smoke. The trees whispered differently now, nervous, brittle, like voices afraid to speak their own names. Sylvaris moved through the ruin without sound. His steps pressed ash into the roots, leaving no trace behind. He followed the scent of rot. Beneath it lingered something sharper, a tang like burned feathers. The grove had lost its rhythm, but new patterns always formed in the silence left behind. Predators came first. Scavengers followed. Life adjusted. It was the Wayfinder's duty to read those shifts and to correct what tilted too far into hunger. At the edge of the fallen clearing, he found bones. A fox, perhaps, though nothing remained but ribs polished to white. The marks on them were too clean, as if cut by a blade. Beside them, black feathers shimmered with oil-slick color, iridescent even in the twilight gloom. Each one hummed faintly when touched, not the hum of magic, but of corruption. He knew the stories, crows that fed on the dead until the dead fed through them. Such creatures grew bold after disaster, drawn to what lingered between life and decay. This one had gorged on the swarm's remains, and something inside it had changed. The grove would not survive a beast that learned to hunger like a plague. Sylvaris knelt and ran his fingers through the ash. Warm, recent. He looked up, scanning the twisted branches overhead. A single shape clung to the limb high above, a shadow against shadows. Wings spread wider than his arms, head cocked to one side. It watched him, silent except for the faint rustle of its feathers. He waited, breath shallow, muscles still. The forest around him tightened with the same restraint. A leaf fell, drifting slow through the air. When it touched the ground, the crow moved. It dropped without sound, striking like a stone from the heavens. Sylvaris rolled aside as talons tore through the space his head had occupied, raking deep grooves into the earth. The impact shook dust loose from the branches. The creature's cry split the air, part avian, part something older and wrong. Not a call, but a challenge. Sylvaris rose in one motion, drawing his hunting spear. The lantern at his belt flared white-blue, throwing shards of light across the clearing. The crow recoiled, its feathers flashing in the glow, black laced with veins of glass, each edge glinting like the locust's wings. The corruption had taken root here, too. They circled each other. Breath met breath. The crow's eyes glowed faintly with reflected stars, unblinking. Sylvaris adjusted his grip, feeling his pulse align with the rhythm of his heartbeat, slow, measured, and calm. He waited for the opening. Predators died when they mistook motion for advantage. The crow struck again, faster, a blur of talons and glass. Sylvaris twisted, letting the spear's haft glance off the claws, the shock traveling up his arm. The second strike came low, beak darting for his chest, and this time he countered. The spear drove upward, scraping against feathers that rang like metal. Sparks flashed, brief as lightning. Pain bloomed across his face. A wing swept past, claws catching his cheek, tearing a hot line from ear to jaw. The world tilted. Blood filled his mouth with iron taste. He stumbled back, blinking through the haze. The crow loomed above him, feathers spreading like a night sky unfurled. He felt the world burn cold, the same chill he had felt when the first tree had died. The grove's corruption had found him. The realization struck harder than the pain. He would not let it take him, too. With a guttural breath, he lunged. The spear found flesh beneath the wing, sliding deep. The crow shrieked, a sound so sharp it rattled leaves from branches. It thrashed, striking blindly, wings beating storms into the air. Sylvaris held the weapon fast, twisting until the light from his lantern flared through the creature's chest like fire through glass. Then, silence. The crow collapsed, body twitching once before going still. Feathers drifted down around him, dimming as they touched the ground. The grove exhaled, a sigh that felt both mournful and relieved. Sylvaris sank to his knees, panting. The blood from his cheek ran into his collar, cold against his throat. He pressed a trembling hand over the wound, felt the shape of the scar forming beneath his skin, a mark that would never fade. He didn't curse it. He simply breathed through it, each inhale heavier than the last. The crow's body began to crumble. Not decay, but dissolution. Feathers turning to dust, bones to black sand. In the remains, something gleamed, a single perfect feather of translucent glass. It pulsed faintly, a mirror of its own heartbeat. Sylvaris reached for it and hesitated. Touching it would mean carrying its curse, perhaps its memory. But leaving it behind would mean forgetting what he had sworn. Slowly, he picked it up. The edge cut his palm. He didn't let go. When he rose, the lantern's flame steadied again. The forest no longer watched him with fear, but with sorrowed respect. He turned toward the deeper shadows, where the light didn't reach. The grove had lost one guardian, but it had gained another, one marked by scar and oath. Behind him, the last echo of the crow's cry faded through the branches, swallowed by the endless twilight. And where silence once meant peace, it now meant the hunt had begun. I hope you enjoyed this chapter of Starveil, the Oath of Frostwing. Join us next week on Fantasy Fable Friday as the adventure continues here on Free Your Geek. Thank you so much for listening.